When you look at cybersecurity, it's basically a similar development to what safety has experienced over the last years. Right now, it's increasingly connected to safety as well as industrial automation. It's no standalone exercise anymore. That means if you have a safe plant, if you have implemented all the safety procedures that you have and that are somehow possible, but your plant is not secure, you don't have a safe plant. If you have automated a plant very, very well, but you need the data from somewhere else and you need the input and maybe have the remote maintenance, and this is not secure, well, then also your automation system is not really working. You can change input variable, you can mainly base decisions on wrong data. So cybersecurity gets really, really critical, and it needs to be interwoven and connected with safety as well as industrial automation. Right now, it's unfortunately stated that the password protection is quite poor. Most still use this standard password that came with the device. They haven't really changed it. You also have accidental data disclosure, which is the very famous USB stick that you forgot somewhere. It also can be a PowerPoint presentation that's in the wrong hands. You have also insecure endpoints. So bring your own device, bring your own computer. This basically adds a lot of insecurity and sometimes often unknown devices into a manufacturing network. A lot of stuff is actually shared with social media. So if you want to secure your information, you need to teach your employees not to share everything on Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, or Facebook. And also, many companies do not realize they are actually a target. Ask a company from the defense industry and they have a very, very different view on cybersecurity than, let's say, a standard machine builder. However, especially, let's say, the small, mid-sized OEMs with their hidden championship technology and their state-of-the-art machines, they are often target of industrial espionage. And that is not always China and Russia, it can also be US and Europe. So many companies are not aware that they are actually a target. You have phishing, very popular with males. I actually have no idea why it's still working, but it's still around, so it is still working. And then there's actually spear phishing, which is a very, very targeted email, and it's even harder to identify right from the start. But when you look at all of these threats of a company, they cannot be solved with technology. They can be supported by technology, but the actual key is human behavior. Now coming to the outside view, what is the real threat of a company? The first thing that we need to say is that the number of attackers and the sophistication of attacks is increasing. So it's not just the hacker kid on the computer seeing what it can do with the stuff. It's actually more and more organized cybercrime. And before we come to this scary part again, there is much more. We actually have information leakage all the time. I mentioned the USB stick before, but it's also, again, presentations, all kind of information flowing around. We have the bring your own computer and bring your own device, which really adds a lot of unmanaged and uncontrollable risk. And at the same time, we have hacktivists that create some sort of fear, uncertainty, and doubt. And often these hacktivists manage to trigger this sort of headless chicken syndrome, which fuel corporate activism. That means you basically do something, and after you've implemented the firewall, you sit back, relax, and forget about the cybersecurity overall. This is obviously not helping. And often here the mobile apps become the main route for a compromise, which means you really shut down the possibilities of the internet for the employees. But the real threat is actually this here. Cybercrime as a service. You can hire a hacker and tell him to either espionage a certain company or really mess around with the control systems in a company. This is possible. Also, we have more sponsored attacks-backed espionage. The next version or next variety of the Stuxnet virus, which is still the most famous, is online. It was discovered again. No one knows where this is coming from and who's behind. Now, if you combine all this, you can basically summarize as there's the good, the bad, and the ugly. The good ones are the companies that actually are aware of the risks, that invest in security programs, and that are aware of the internal and external threats. And this is the minority of companies. You have the bad, which are the ones that basically have insecure practices and behavior. So they often have a sort of system in place, but they don't really maintain it very properly, and so these companies are really prone to attacks. And then you have the ugly, that comes back to the cyber espionage, this cybercrime as a service, where you have a number of sophistication of cyber attacks. And so the likelihood of serious industrial cyber intrusions increases on a basically daily basis. And how quickly this is increasing, we're going to show you in a different charts in a few seconds. All right, so cybersecurity tomorrow. We already live in a very connected world, but when we move from a connected world to a world with ubiquitous connectivity, with ubiquitous computing, this also means that there's a potential threat and an entrance door anywhere and anytime. So if you can access your system anytime, someone else can access it also anytime and anywhere. Cloud computing is on the rise, and actually cloud computing is often seen as a solution for the problem. Instead of having 20 different servers lying around or standing around somewhere in the plant or in the office building, have it centralized in the cloud and have an external team of experts managing the security and the access to it. And next to the ubiquitous connectivity with smartphones, etc., we have again more intelligent devices that are distributed on the plant floor and that can access the control system. Right? So bottom line, cost and performance benefits are driving industrial companies to adopt IoT, and the IoT needs to be secure, and IoT goes only hand in hand with cybersecurity. If you look at cybersecurity as we basically think of it today, it's basically around the industrial control system. However, if we move to a different approach to manufacturing, control is very, very closely related to enterprise systems. It's very closely linked to intelligent assets. If we have intelligent maintenance, we need to have the motor or the drive telling the control system or telling the enterprise system that there's something wrong and it needs maintenance, so these needs to be connected. And in the end, there comes the workforce with a mobile device. So there is no standalone security anymore in future. It needs to be a concept of everything covering these 4 different pillars. All right. These activities, at least in Germany, are coordinated by the Federal Office for Information Security, and this office also created this horrible statistics. The question is, have you been, or was your organization target of successful cyber attack? Not attack, successful attack. So the attackers got in. And here the increase was 13.4%. I would say right now, my gut feeling, if you are in a market that has 13% growth rate, you would be very, very happy. But this is the bad growth rate, so to say. You need to take this actually with a pinch of salt, because if you compare this, the no fraction here is actually, it gets lower, but only by 5%. So this 13% can also mean that people are much more aware of the cyber attacks. Also, I want to point out that here 10% of the organizations that were questioned and interviewed say that they were target of a successful cyber attack with severe consequences. So what to do? Well, the first thing is audits. It's not, cybersecurity is a journey. It's not one-time effort, so you need to do that continuously. On average, we say every 6 months. You need to tackle technology and behavior, which means don't only buy a new firewall and new technology, work with your co-workers and employees to make your company secure. And what has also changed over the last years is the offering from suppliers. In the past, it basically was a here's your firewall, go configure it yourself mentality. Now, companies are more and more developing to come to service providers of cybersecurity. Some come from the device level. So if you have a company that comes from the device level, they actually develop their service around these. And some are slightly more from the holistic, they come from the enterprise side and view the company as a whole. This is really good support for the end users, and this is really changing the complete market of cybersecurity.